We live in a world, there's never been more information about losing weight ever in the history of our human journey. I mean, you can't move for whether it's celebrities and their keep fit videos, whether it's Phil and what's-her-face, Holly, in the morning. There's always a keep fit component to that. Every single magazine, everything online, whether it's about diets, how you should eat, every TV program that Channel 4 or 5 lob out at the moment is how to look good, eat less, eat well for less. Goodness me, the list goes on. But is it down to the state or the individual? Let's speak with Brendan O'Neill, editor of Spiked Online. Afternoon to you, Brendan. You're, like myself, you're a fine form of a man, so this doesn't apply to people like us. However, it's a big old announcement from the PM here, isn't it? I mean, he's getting serious. Gastric bans paid for by the government, maybe.
It's very serious, and it indicates a change in his thinking, of course, because as he himself said, he used to take a far more libertarian line on these issues. And I have to say, I preferred it when he did take a more libertarian line, because there's a real problem with nanny statism. I think there's a problem when the state thinks that it is its responsibility to control every aspect of our life. There has to be an element of choice. As you've just said, there has never been more options to go on a diet, to join a gym. We're bombarded with that information all the time. And some people choose that way of life and other people reject it and prefer to be plump, eat food, drink lots of alcohol, and that's their prerogative. I think it's too far from this road actually saying to people, this is the way you should be and we're going to make you achieve that. I regret that.
We might be having some problems with your line, Brendan. We'll see how it goes, and we'll check back on that. However, I mean, the issue, I suppose, the one I think the government tend to advance when talking about this is that it might not be desirable, and it might go against, as Johnson himself acknowledged, what he would have once thought. But it's actually more expensive for the state not to intervene. I think that seems to be the thinking.
Yes, I've heard that argument many times myself, but I don't think you can just do a kind of cost analysis of these things. I mean, there are many things that we do which end up costing money in terms of health, right? Playing rugby, for example, leads to injuries. Driving your car leads to car crashes. Everything we do involves an element of risk. We make choices all the time that could potentially lead to us getting ill or getting into an accident. But I don't think we should weigh up the costs of those things and then discourage people from doing them. So I'm just worried about the way in which, because one of the things that will have drawn many people to people like Boris is that they were more open-minded on people making their own choices and were very sniffy about that kind of upper middle class section of the establishment that constantly wanted to wag its finger at the rest of us for being fat and unhealthy. Now that Boris has gone over to that dark side, I think people will be quite disappointed with that.
Has he? Do you think he's really gone over there? I was listening to that interview this morning and wondering, is there a sort of a directive that's come from the head honchos in the Department of Health saying, look, you do realise the NHS is going to collapse literally under the weight of its own population. So if we don't do something, then we are really in trouble inside the next 10 or 20 years. So, Prime Minister, you've got to get behind this, and that's the reason why. I mean, he talked about his own brush with death. Do you think that's really what's motivating him?
I think it's probably a combination of those two things, because when people are gravely ill, when people are in intensive care, it has a transformative impact on them. There's numerous studies about the life-changing impact that being in intensive care can have on people. So I'm sure that's part of it, and I'm sure there's big pressure from the Department of Health, who will be interested in saving money as well as making people healthier. But I think a morally healthy government is one that would say people must have the maximum amount of freedom and choice. We hope people will make the right kinds of choices, but we accept that people have the right to make the wrong choices, because that's part of being a human being. And that approach is preferable, I think. And if the question is, where will this end? If the government, as is being proposed, if it bans buy one, get one free deals, which is one of the proposals, if it bans those in supermarkets, What else is it going to ban? Is it going to clamp down on drinking more than 5 pints in a pub? Is it going to physically make it illegal to smoke anywhere in the country? This is opening the door, I think, to greater state intervention into the most intimate parts of our lives, and we should resist that.
There is a possibility, of course, that this just disappears as quick as it arrived and we never hear any more about it. Government policies do sometimes, or government announcements do sometimes have a habit of doing that.
They do, and I hope it does disappear, because, what's really interesting about the Conservative Party at the moment, if you look at the speech Michael Gove gave recently on the need to reform government, I mean, it was such an interesting, intellectual, deep laying out of what this government plans to do. It plans to be a forward-looking government. It wants to involve working-class people in the democratic process. It has all these Roosevelt-type ideas for a New Deal and for pushing society forward after COVID. And at the same time, what's the Labour Party doing? It's obsessing over the West Bank, and it's obsessing over trans rights, and it's obsessing over white supremacy and all these other pretty nonsense ideas that most normal people aren't talking about. So the Conservative Party is actually doing incredibly well at the moment. Labour is a lost cause as far as I can tell. And I think Conservatives need to keep their eye on the ball rather than getting dragged into these old Nanny State ideas, which I think are pointless and could go in a really bad direction.
Good work, Brendan. Always lovely to get your take on these things. Brendan O'Neill is the editor of Spiked Online. It is true, though, isn't it? If you look, there was a figure that diabetes alone could bankrupt the NHS inside the next 20 years or something. So that's just one thing, and the associated obesity and heart disease and all manner of other things that will go with that. So something sort of has to be done, is the theory. I don't know how the personal responsibility, of course. It sounds completely logical, doesn't it? Nobody wants to really be fat, and no one wants to be fat and really ill at the same time. They discover they've got a bunch of tumours because of their proclivity to just eat chips and pies all day long. I don't know anybody who wants that. But we've never had so much advice around this. We've never had... We mentioned magazine culture, exercise videos, daytime TV. You go online, there's all manner of... what's his name? Joe flipping Wicks. That bloke. Him was penetrating every living room throughout the last 3 months, to coin a phrase. And man alive, you had kids growing up realize this is what you've got to do to look good. You've got to look great. Everybody's got to look good. And of course, the aesthetic culture we're in as well. If you go to the world of Instagram or Snapchat and you just see it's a kind of it's a fashion world. It's a catwalk, a constant digital catwalk of how good you've got to look. So we've never had more messages about watching our waistlines. Is it laziness? Is that what it is? Could it be laziness? You know what I did the other day? I went to McDonald's. I actually went to the McDonald's. I was never going to join one of those queues for 2 hours. I thought I'll wait a little bit and wait a couple of weeks until the queues have died down. There was still a bit of a queue. And I thought, I'll go to McDonald's. This is going to be fantastic. And I queued up. It was about 20 minutes, but I have queued for 20 minutes before on normal times. And I literally got to the bit where you order your food at the drive-through, where the guy normally goes, "Can I take your order, please?" And you go to give your order, and he went, "I'm very sorry, sir, we've had a power cut." What? I just queued up for 20 minutes, had a power cut. So I never got the McDonald's. Maybe that was a message from above that you want to watch your waistline, then this is the way to do it. Possibly it is. We'll take some comments on that along the way as well.